Hello friends and welcome to 3 AM Europe. Almost 2 months ago I posted a clip on YouTube which was dealing with the coming financial collapse, where already in July we were seeing signs of the world's financial markets instability, such as in Greece, Puerto Rico and the Chinese stock markets. I also mentioned that this enormous fall in China would also affect the rest of the world and that it would also hit the US stock markets. Now, I received a lot of criticism for saying that, with people saying, how could you say this? And people who were claiming that this crisis or this crash in China, if there was a crisis, would only be for the period of time. But friends, that is not what we have been seeing the past couple of months, such as late August and the beginning of September. For instance, August the 24th is now called the Black Monday, as it says on Telegraph. Panic selling grips global markets as stocks crash on China turmoil. And more than 130 billion pounds was wiped out in 10 days. Interestingly enough, that on September the 8th, data came out which showed that China's trade surplus surges 40% as imports plummet. And it said that trade data from China on Tuesday showed a sharp drop in the value of imports and exports, which means that the country's economic slowdown into developed economies has really started to be seen. And this means also that decelerating economic growth not only means that China is buying less from overseas, but reaping less money from its shipments too. An independent Chinese economist said that now the global slowdown has very much become a reality. And another commentator said that the world economy is on a downward trend. And so that the World Bank and even IMF are giving warning signs that we are going to experience a global recession. However, on September the 6th, 2 days before this trade data came out, the G20 tries to dispel China fears with sunny economic outlook. And it said, the article in Financial Times, that finance ministers from the G20 nations have insisted the global economy has nothing to fear from a China slowdown, as they try to dispel the pall of gloom that has been cast by sagging growth and market turmoil. So basically what finance ministers are saying is that while a China slowdown is real and we can see it with our own eyes, we don't need to fear, since it has nothing to do with the global economy. And now comes the best part. Listen to this. They expressed confidence in the economic forecast in spite of mounting evidence that global growth is falling short of expectation. Now, in my opinion, it's not good if global growth falls short of expectation. And the thing is this. How can confidence be expressed when evidence shows the opposite? Anyways, but today, all around the world, the financial markets are expressing ambiguity and lack of confidence due to the crisis in China and even what has been taking place in the US stock markets. For instance, the 20th and the 21st of August, to mention some dates, the Dow Jones plummeted and fell 358 points and respectively 530 points. And when you add these two days together, the total 2-day stock market crash that we witnessed comes to a grand total of 888 points, which is larger than any 1-day stock market crash in US history. But by itself, 530-point plunge on Friday, the 21st of August, was the 9th worst stock market crash in all of US history. And this has come as a shock for many, where people have been saying, how can this happen? But it has not come as a shock for those who have their eyes open and see the signs of an impending financial collapse. And before we continue, let me add this comment, that the reason why this is significant is that August is, generally speaking, a very slow month in the financial world. Many people know that most of the really noteworthy stock market crashes throughout history have taken place during the month of September and October. So it's interesting that already now, in late August, markets are reacting in this way. But some people are saying, but stock markets have gone up many times since that time. And yes, it is true. Stock market have gone up, but it has also had many downs in great volume the last couple of weeks, which is how it should be if there is insecurity and a lack of confidence in the financial markets. It was similarly at the crash in '08. Reacting to what was happening, Damon McBride, a former advisor to Gordon Brown, tweeted that people should stock up on canned food and bottled water to avoid fallout from another stock market crash. And even the Financial Times wrote that Robert Shiller, a Nobel Economics laureate, said that US stocks are overvalued and we are in a process of seeing a bubble created. Now, the big question on Wall Street the last couple of weeks has been the issue of whether the Federal Reserve Bank is going to raise interest rates or not. There are some people who are voicing for a raise, such as we read in Financial Times, that monetary policy operates with a time lag, so US Fed must act soon. However, some are issuing warnings not to raise interest rates. There is this article that says that US interest rate rise could trigger global debt crisis. And it says that global debt levels are dangerously high and central banks cannot keep the game going indefinitely, warns the high priest of orthodoxy, which is the BIS, the central bank of central banks, something that we have already talked about in our previous clip 2 months ago. And Mr. Borio warns investors not to push their luck. He says, it is unrealistic and dangerous to expect that monetary policy can cure all the global economy's ills. However, there is not a consensus on what should happen. On the one hand, people are saying that emerging markets call on Fed to lift the rates and end uncertainty. And also Switzerland prays for US rates rise to ease economic pleasure. On the other hand, there are warnings, for instance, from the World Bank that a decision to raise interest rates would destabilize emerging markets, and this Kaushik Basu warned that the Fed should keep rates on hold next week, which is this week, to avoid panic turmoil in emerging markets. Also, IMF warns against rate rises by leading economies and instead continue with QE, which is quantitative easing. Well, in either case, whether interest rate rises this week or it will not, and so quantitative easing, QE4, is going to follow, which is basically printing cheap money. In either way, the US economy is going to fall because these two things are not long-term solutions to a deep problem that the US economy has. This interest rate rise would also affect Europe. And so, given the almost upsurge of the Cold War lately between US and East, the question is, how would this affect China and Russia? This is a very interesting question, and I want to know. Now, Financial Times says, interest rate rise, China investors on edge amid outflow risk. And listen to this. The article says, a strong dollar. A strong dollar. Now, that is what people are saying, what analysts are saying, that if you would raise interest rates, you would also have a strong dollar. Now, a strong dollar would also, mixed with expectations of depreciating renminbi, tends to entice those who hold renminbi-denominated assets to switch them into dollars. And also, how is this affecting Russia? Interest rate rise. Russia scrambles to address uncertainty. And for Russia's central bank, a stronger what? Dollar, almost inevitably the result of a rate hike in the US, will make it even more difficult to rebuild its international reserves. Russia will suffer maximum pain. So a strong dollar may influence the Chinese and Russian economies badly. So what is the reaction of Russia, do you think? Russia Today said, Putin said, dump the dollar. Russian President Vladimir Putin has drafted a bill that aims to eliminate the US dollar and the euro from trade between CIS countries. And so you see, for a long time, tensions have been building between the United States and Russia over Syria, Ukraine, the price of oil, and a whole host of other issues. And it is expected that Putin's new bill will become law. And this is only one element of a much larger trend that is now developing. Could it be that by raising interest rates, the US are actually targeting Russia and China in a kind of currency war, a war which the common people do not see? That's a question that I want to raise as well. And you see, and as these tensions are continuing to develop, Russia together with China have come together to start to reject the US dollar. We know that, for instance, in August, Bloomberg reported that China sells US treasuries to support yuan. And critics and skeptics might say, but others are going to buy US treasuries. Friends, that is not the point here. The point is that this cooperation between Russia and China is threatening US dominance. And we also see that even China approves usage of ruble instead of US dollar for border city. And so the ruble is being introduced in place of the US dollar. You say, why is this important that the dollar is being replaced? We don't have much time to deal with it in this clip. Just take a look at it on the internet. You see, the dollar is the world's reserve currency, and the dollar is now being challenged. And so my question is, are we now seeing the dollar being crashed, and perhaps a new world currency is around the corner? Well, you see, there are those who even have worked in the Fed are criticizing its policies, where it says that era of low interest rates fails to generate growth policy makers expected. And the article ends like this: once again, the fate of the global economy rests on the judgment of a few individuals without reliable economic models to guide them. How the Fed is going to decide this week is crucial for the whole world economy. There are three possible paths to take, three possible outcomes. The first is that the Fed raises rates. According to me, this would be a policy blunder since the weak global and US growth, but the result would be, as we discussed, a strong dollar. I don't personally expect the Fed to raise interest rates, but hey, you never know with the Fed. Number two would be that the Fed is not going to raise interest rates, but will continue to speak about a future rate increase. This increase would be either in October or December or somewhere next year. Or number three, the Fed does not raise interest rates and is going to start with QE4 and continue with QE5 and quantitative easing, or as some other analysis has been talking about, QT, quantitative tightening. But now let us go to our main issue in this clip, which most of you want to know. How is this crisis going to develop? What is going to happen with the stock markets and with the whole financial system? Well, first and foremost, nobody can deny anymore that something bad in biblical proportion is going to hit us. For instance, an article at MarketWatch argues that the Dow Jones is going to drop to 5,000 points. Let me remind you, we are at 16,000 points at the moment. But whether that is going to happen or not is not important. But the thing is this: we are going to see something similar or even worse as we saw in the financial crisis in 2008. However, as I said in the last clip, the BIS argues that central banks will not be able to solve the crisis. However, the world markets are trying to get help from the central banks, and that is what I don't understand. But the question is, when is this crash going to happen? Once again, we don't know. It can happen at any time now, since this bubble or crisis is something that has been created. It's an artificial bubble which has been caused by the Fed and the central banks by not raising interest rates a long time ago, and instead introducing quantitative easing and the printing of cheap money. There are some financial analysts who argue that this crash can happen at any time, somewhere in September or October. It is, of course, difficult to give a particular day. It can happen next year, it can happen anytime. But the thing is, we need to prepare that this is going to happen, that this whole thing can blow up any day. For instance, former CIA advisor Jim Rickards and Harry Dent are all arguing that $100 trillion in financial assets may disappear. I'm talking about stocks, I'm talking about bonds, I'm talking about loans. But what I want to focus on is this. When this crash will occur, and we can see that it will occur, once again, the 7-year cycle of economic crashes, I discussed it in the previous clip, I don't want to bring it up. But the question is, what kind of financial system are we going to see in the future? Is this a demolition of the financial system that we see today? I want to bring this short clip to your attention. This is a presentation that I held almost 3 years ago, and you can see how these predictions are getting more and more accurate for each day. What will be the coming global financial structure? Or let us call it the New World Economic Order. In this presentation, I discuss a book written by a former Jesuit priest by the name of Malachi Martin, where he, in the 1990s, he was discussing that there are 3 rivals who are competing to the bringing up of the New World Order. But he said that only one of them is going to succeed. These 3 C's existed in the 1990s. These 3 C's are, let me remind you, as you're going to see in the clip, it is communism, capitalism, and Catholicism. The 3 C's. And they are all competing with each other. However, only one will succeed. Let us take a look.
Do all these 3 powers exist today? As world powers? No. One of them is gone. Which one is it? Communism. What happened to communism? Or rather, who received the honor of defeating communism? Who helped to defeat communism? The Pope. And I could give you more and more articles, but I think this is enough. I think you have understood it. So the Pope is the main figure in defeating one of the competitors. One is gone, 2 is left. And who are the ones that are left? Capitalism and Catholicism. Now I wonder, is there any tension between these 2 powers today? I mean, have you recently heard of economic problems? Have you heard of financial collapse in America and in Europe? And who is the big scapegoat? Who is everybody accusing of for this disaster that we have? Capitalism. So if the Pope received the credit of defeating communism, do you think the same will happen now? Because Malachi Martin said only one power will succeed. Let's see. What do we read here? This is from the Telegraph. I mean, I'm just quoting from the big newspapers. The Telegraph wrote, October 24th, 2011, Vatican sides with anti-capitalist protesters and attacks global financial system. What are they doing? The Vatican aligned itself with anti-capitalism protesters around the world on Monday when it condemned the idolatry of the market and called for a radical shake-up of the global financial system. Now check this out, because this is interesting. Now we are beginning to see what is going on. And this is a quote from the Telegraph. By demanding that the worst excesses of global capitalism be reined in, the Holy See, that is the Vatican, echoed the message of Protestants encamped outside St. Paul's Cathedral and so on. In a forthright statement, the Vatican's Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace called for an end to rampant speculation, the redistribution of wealth, greater ethics, and the establishment of a central world bank, to which national banks would have to cede power. Such an authority would have universal jurisdiction over governments' economic strategies. So the Vatican says, all right, capitalism doesn't work. We need to have one power, or rather one central world bank that is controlling everything else. Isn't that interesting? To enforce the mark of the beast, you need to control the economy. Why? Because the Bible says in Revelation 13, verse 6 and 17, that he causes all, both small and great, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell. So in order to introduce the mark of the beast, you need to first control the economy. Is that right?
Yep.
Because those who don't want to receive the mark of the beast will be economically punished.
And now in recent years, through the leadership of the Catholic Church, this has been augmented. This has been said through the leadership of both Pope Benedict XVI, as we saw in the presentation, and through the leadership of Pope Francis. This issue of getting capitalism out and establishing Catholicism has been raised even more, and many people don't understand this. I believe this is a controlled demolition of the financial world markets, where we are going to see a feudalism taking place. The Bible, for instance, says in Revelation chapter 13 that when the mark of the beast is established, it is established upon the rich and the poor. In other words, before Jesus returns, there are only going to be two types of classes. It's going to be the rich and the poor, just as it was during the Dark Ages. Right now, you have the poor, you have the middle class, and you have the rich ones. And now, in the 10th of July this year, 2015, Pope calls for new economic order. And what is that? For instance, in Huffington Post, we read that Pope Francis condemns corruption and unbridled capitalism in South America. And in AOL.com, Pope Francis calls for new ecological economic order. I wish we could have time to go into the ecological part. But once again, the Pope is attacking capitalism because he knows that only two of these are standing to building up the New World Order. It's either capitalism or Catholicism. But we can see that the power of, what should I say, capitalism is diminishing even more, and the power of Catholicism is now being raised. In a couple of weeks from now, Pope Francis is going to visit the United States. And on the 23rd of September 2015, in just 1 week, the Pope Francis will meet President Obama. And it is interesting that Francis is the 266th Pope who will be meeting with President Obama on the 266th day of the year. And I am wondering whether something is being birthed, if you know what I mean, on that day. Simply because 266 days is a typical human gestation period from conception to birth. So what is going to take place? We don't know. We are going to see it. But it is absolutely amazing. Your question, how exactly the global financial system's transition from capitalism to Catholicism will take place. You say, how is it going to happen? I don't know. What we do know, however, is that the present crisis of the world markets is an indicator that capitalism is living its last moments. It's a dying, wounded soldier who has fought a good fight, but it's about to be conquered. Bible prophecy, as indicated in Revelation chapter 13, verse 3, speaking of the Catholic Church, not the people, not the individuals, but the system, the mindset that the whole world is going to follow the beast in the last days. This following the beast is a mindset It's an acceptance of not only the political and religious order, but it's even an acceptance of the economical, financial, and even monetary policies and thoughts of the Catholic Church. And that is going to lay the foundation and cornerstone of the coming New World Order and the coming economic order. Now, I'm not saying that the coming financial crash is the post-apocalyptic crisis which is foretold in Revelation 18. However, this may be the crisis that plunges the world into the fulfillment of last-day events in Bible prophecy, a crisis which can be used to bring about the New World Order and the enforcement of the mark of the beast, Sunday observance before Jesus returns to take his people, his followers who have accepted Jesus as their Lord and Savior, to heaven. People are saying, in this time, in this severe time, buy gold or buy silver. But when this crash comes, and it will come, we are going to see what I believe government confiscation. I believe that they will do what they just did in Cyprus or in Greece. I believe that these two countries have been some kind of tests of seeing how people psychologically think when bad times come, and how whether riots comes and so forth. And they are going to do just what they did in Greece to prevent a run on the banks. They will limit the amount of money that you can withdraw from your account as the currency becomes worthless. Then they will have a temporary shutdown while the new currency is put in place. All the while, riots will be happening everywhere until the military gets called in and martial law is declared. And then mark of the beast is established and enforced. And those who continue to speak about Bible prophecy and point people to Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ alone as the Savior of this world and the Savior of humanity will be put in prison to await kangaroo courts that have already determined a guilty verdict. Friends, this is something not to be afraid of. This is something that we are already seeing now at the moment. I believe that what we are seeing in the economical world is soon a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Jesus is about to come, and what a tremendous gold we have, the Bible. The Bible which has told us what is going to happen, and we don't need to be afraid. Friends, I am so excited to live in these last days, and Jesus is about to come. Jesus is about to restore his kingdom as it was in the beginning, a perfect kingdom without sin, without bad, without any of these things, and only righteousness, love, and sanctity will reign. Friends, I'm excited. I hope you are excited as you have got a new insight into what is taking place and that this is a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Friends, stay tuned. Please subscribe to our channel and just send these clips and presentations and sermons to people who you know is interested and will heed the message. Thank you guys for listening. And for this, 3 a.m. Europe, let the message go out. Thank you.